Do you have to chop to be a good drummer? What if you just want to play in a band and not show off? What if the type of drumming that you like is all about groove? But then you open Instagram or YouTube, and it seems like in order for people to like you, you have to Well, today we're going to stop the madness and ask the fundamental question. If you want to play drums well, do you have to
chop?
But in the process, ask an even more fundamental question. What is good and bad on drums? Because a lot of people out here haven't defined that for themselves. But when we really dig into this, I think you're going to be surprised. And yes, I realize that sounds clickbaity. Oh, I'm Nate, and people call me the 80/20 drummer. And if you want my qualifications for this, I make a decent paper plane, and I've never met anybody better at parallel parking. Beyond that, I'm just a guy offering his opinion. Today on the channel, do you have to chop to be good at drums when it seems like everybody is chopping? Stay tuned. And folks, today we're going to do something a little bit different. Throughout this video, you may see me playing some grooves and some fills, and usually we transcribe the grooves for you. Today we're transcribing the fills. If you'd like transcriptions of the fills I play, just click the link below the player and you can get them for free. That's it, on with the lesson. Let's take this in layers. First answer, no, you don't have to chop. You can find plenty of people of all stripes who are respected and even revered who very rarely play or played chops. J.J. Johnson, for starters, very groove-focused player. Ash Sohn. If we think about players who have some chops but constantly hide their power, we could say Yusuf Days. I mean, do you listen to Yusuf because you're hoping he busts out a crazy solo, then you turn it off when he doesn't? Questlove. And what about the legions of studio drummers who probably can chop but choose to play really simply because the arrangement requires it?
This girl is on fire. This girl is on fire.
With the exception of a couple genres, how common are drum solos or flashy chops and musical arrangements anyway? You chop for show, you groove for... So yes, at layer 1, you can absolutely be a good drummer, which is to say people will respect you without chopping. But you probably know where I'm going next. What actually is a good drummer? I've made tons of videos with my operational definition. Somebody who has control of time and touch and can get their ideas out clearly. But even that depends on who's asking. It's like asking what's a good socket wrench. A lot depends on what you're using it for. My definition is about being functional and hireable for things like tours and sessions. But that's a subtly different definition than being the perfect fit for a band. That may favor styles that, while they still blend well musically, are a little more untrained sounding, in just the same way photorealism isn't the only valid style of painting. If we go even broader, the goal of a lot of people out there is just to feel good playing. Depending on what types of things affect their self-esteem, you could mean having any relationship with the instrument where it doesn't feel like work, where it feels fun and rewarding most of the time you play. And actually, let's jump off this definition for a second. Let's talk about yours truly here. For me, being able to chop is part of being a good drummer. Yes. Okay, okay. In all seriousness, this isn't through the looking glass. It's because I've defined what makes me feel good on drums, and that's getting ever better at improvisation. And there are a ton of drummers who feel this way too. Zeke the Freak from Berkeley and my podcast. Larnell Lewis, Noah Feuerbringer. And if we go back in time, Steve Gadd, Bonham, Art Blakey. It feels a certain way to have your limbs moving faster than your body can comprehend. It feels like jiu-jitsu, like surfing. And we want to be careful to respect that artistic decision as much as we respect going for the chopless aesthetic. If we're purely using musical validity as our guide, that means you have to have taste and choose your moments. But that cuts both ways. If you play prog rock or certain types of fusion or live R&B arrangements, you're going to have to be able to get around the kit. But one constant in all of this is at least you're doing it for your pure as the driven snow artistic integrity, right? Well, turns out that's complicated too. Would that it were so simple. In a corner over here with my artistic integrity. But many of our favorite artists chase commercial success or complain they weren't given more attention or recognition. Miles Davis, often seen as the ultimate rebel, is widely reputed to have changed his style so many times because he was trying to stay relevant with the public. What I'm trying to say is there's no bright line between being completely artistically pure and being completely sold out. And to throw Benny Greb under the bus a little, here he is expressing the opinion that we should be a bit of a show person.
You're such a great artist, they said. And he said, like, I'm afraid I'm not an artist. And they were like, how so? And then he explained that he has this entertainer side, so he wants to be loved and he wants the audience to be happy.
The way I interpret this, and I'll say this out loud, is it's okay if you want to please the public. It's okay if you want people to like your playing. It's okay if you share a clip on Instagram and check back a half hour later and feel good because people liked it. Anyone who tells you you're not an artist or you're a clout chaser or you're somehow bad for that impulse is gaslighting. We humans have held a very strong sense of wanting to be in the group because to be expelled from the tribe usually meant death back in the day. I'm pretty sure this is not very controversial. If there are any anthropologists who want to correct me in the comments, go nuts. But to pretend that people who have this very human impulse are bad is dishonest in my opinion. But Nate, where does this leave us with the issue of the chops and everything? Well, I've heard the viewpoint that any drummer who learns to chop is doing it for the clicks. And it's true, I've heard many drummers say that when they post groove stuff, they get a bunch of heck yeahs and big ups. And when they post chops, they get 10 times the engagement. In a second, I'll talk about the difference between being in it partially for clicks and exclusively for clicks, and propose a different standard for determining how much you should listen to other people's opinions about your playing. But I want to offer two counterpoints. The first is that if you never chop in public, that's kind of a safe place to be. No one will ever criticize you for laying down a solid groove and playing for the song. I mean, they shouldn't, but they also won't. So while non-choppers have a badge of their artistic integrity because they're not chasing likes, it's also not like they're risking a whole lot. When you start to chop in public, on the other hand, it's live by the sword, die by the sword. Everyone has an opinion, primarily prog rock drummers. If you don't chop loudly enough, or actually mainly if you don't chop loudly enough, there are legions of people ready to let you have it for your chops not being good enough. Then there's a whole other group who are going to let you have it because you're chopping instead of playing for the song. What I'm trying to say is it's not straightforwardly upside to chop in public. With just groove folks, there are fewer accolades but also fewer haters. For the choppers, yes, there's more attention, but it's also a jungle out there. All of us gets us back to where we were before. Ultimately, you have to do right by yourself. Not because wanting attention is inherently bad, but because when you get enough of it, you realize two things. First, yes, it makes you happy, but only in a fleeting way, unless it's on top of your intrinsic satisfaction at having created something you love. Conversely, there's a confidence that comes from having your own North Star. If you have artistic standards for yourself, and you meet or exceed them, you'll find yourself surprisingly thick-skinned about critics, etc., etc. Second, you're never going to make everybody happy. I remember videos of some of my favorite drummers where a bunch of the comments were negative. If you're the best chopper on earth, plenty of people will say you're a show-off, or you don't play for the song, or you're part of the trend that's ruining drumming. Of course, I'm not to the level of my heroes when it comes to raw technique, but knowing that even they face brutal criticism is kind of liberating. You're literally never going to make everyone happy, so why even try? As one aside, you can use criticism to fuel you. That's a little like dancing with the devil, so use with caution. But I've absolutely used haters to fuel months or years of practice. And sometimes I got good enough to escape the crosshairs of that critique, only for somebody else to find something else wrong. Which is to say, use it if it fuels you, but just realize you'll literally never please everyone. So no, you don't have to chop to be a good drummer. Because there are lots of definitions of good drummer that don't require chops. And because ultimately you'll realize that the only person you should answer to is yourself. But I want to add a little postscript. Sometimes you don't know that something makes you happy until you try it. Like any rewarding hobby that seems scary at first. Skiing, jiu-jitsu, international espionage. Or how about this one? I finally worked a Rent song into an 80/20 video, you guys. This is jumping the shark. I can now retire. But that's a classic example of something that seems scary, then when you get on the other side of it, it's so worth it. Everybody who's in a happy relationship now had to summon their courage and venture into an uncomfortable place where they risk rejection, only to learn they felt way better on the other side. So, even if our only creative imperative is pleasing our own internal artistic critic, I'd ask you to be open-minded to the idea that chopping seems scary and unpleasant, just like the first time you asked your now significant other on a date, but once you experience it, you might like it. Come with me to the dark side.
I'm afraid the deflector shield will be quite operational when your friends arrive.
Anyway, bottom line. I feel like we've traveled a great distance to come back where we started. But hopefully we've gained some perspective. I've argued that what it takes to be a good drummer depends a lot on what you're trying to do. But that you can be a good drummer by a lot of those definitions without chopping. And that it's completely human and not selling out or bad or anything to want to be recognized for what you do, to want attention. But that ultimately in time, you'll learn that that can't be your only goal. At least if you want to be happy playing music. Because no matter what, you can't please everybody. So ultimately it comes down to the musician you want to be. But that you should be open-minded to the possibility that you might like chops if you tried them. And that's how you get the gig! Is that one to grow on? Anyway, folks, as I mentioned, this is a lesson about chops, so there are going to be a couple of chops in it. And you heard me play those throughout. And if you'd like a transcription of them, because people always ask, you can get that for free by clicking the link below the player. Dudes, it's been real. Always enjoyed this. See you again real soon in another Lesson of the Week. But first, I want to offer two counterpoints. Oh no, my light just went out. Turn that on. Oh, we have light. Let there be light. Ooh. Oh, and this has been on that whole time. Wait for that. Just watch that run out now. That'd be all we need. That'd be all we need.